Hello, I'm William Friedkin, director of The Exorcist. The Exorcist is a film about the mystery of faith, and I think the fact that it's endured for more than 25 years now is due in large part to what it leaves you with after you've seen the film. It starts with a brilliant screenplay from an equally powerful novel by William Peter Blatty, and it's a story that can perhaps make you question your own value system, even your own sanity, because it strongly and realistically tries to make the case for spiritual forces in the universe, both good and evil. But what you may not be aware of is the fact that The Exorcist is based on a true story. It took place in Silver Spring, Maryland in 1949 and was widely reported by the American press. When I saw the files at Georgetown University pertaining to the actual case, I knew that this was going to be, or needed to be, something more than just another horror film. This had to be a realistic film about inexplicable events. I've always thought that a film should first of all be an emotional experience. It should make you laugh, or cry, or be scared. But it should also inspire and provoke you and make you reflect. Over the years, I think that most people take out of The Exorcist what they bring to it. If you believe that the world is a dark and evil place, then The Exorcist will reinforce that. But if you believe that there is a force for good that combats and eventually triumphs over evil, then you will be taking out of the film what we tried to put into it. In any case, turn down the lights, turn up the sound, and enjoy the digitally remastered version of The Exorcist.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله.
This is William Friedkin. I directed The Exorcist in 1972 and 1973. The film was released on December 26, 1973, in 26 theaters in the United States, before it had a subsequent run around the world. The Exorcist was written for the screen from his novel by William Peter Blatty. The Exorcist opens in northern Iraq, and we actually filmed in northern Iraq. We filmed in a little town called Mosul, which is up in the north, and what you're looking at now are scenes from an actual dig in Hatra that was taking place when we came to film. Hatra was a little town of 100,000 people that was sacked or destroyed by the Sasanians in around 30 or 40 BC. And the Sasanians who attacked the town killed all of the people, all 100,000 of the people who lived in Hatra, and they even cut off the heads of the statues. And a lot of the heads were being dug up at the time that we were making this film. You would see these beheaded statues, and it was very unusual to see this team of German archaeologists that were supervising this dig. At the time that we did this film in Iraq, the Ba'athist Party was still in charge, and it was still basically a one-party, one-man dictatorship. The leader of the country then was a man called Hassan Boker. It wasn't Saddam Hussein. But Iraq was at that time at war with Iran to the east, and Syria to the north, and Kuwait to the south. They were at war on all of their borders when we were over there making this film, and I was there with a largely British crew. The St. Joseph medal, the little medal that Von Sydow is examining here, is an element I added that's not in the novel. I wanted something to be found that was kind of a talisman, in addition to the likeness of the demon Pazuzu, a talisman that would show up later in the film for mysterious and inexplicable reasons. It would later be found around the neck of Father Karras, this same St. Joseph medal, which is found at an archaeological dig of a village that's thousands of years old, where there is no way a St. Joseph medal would be found. I went over to Iraq with a clear idea of what I wanted to film, but I wasn't sure where exactly I would do it. I looked at a number of other archaeological digs before deciding to film at this one, which is called Hatra. So I then adapted the elements and details of Blatty's first chapter to what I found in Hatra, because this is the kind of setting and scenery that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to duplicate. The place where Von Sydow sits, for example, at the outdoor cafe, where we establish that he is taking nitroglycerin pills for his heart, is actually right across the street from the tomb of Nebuchadnezzar, who was one of the ancient kings of Iraq, or of Mesopotamia, as it was called in those days. And the tomb of Nebuchadnezzar is built on top of the tomb of the prophet Jonah. And so we had our actors there, and we were actually filming right at the beginning of new era in civilization. And it took us about 3 weeks to film the first reel of The Exorcist in Iraq. I think the sequence runs just under 10 minutes. And it took 3 weeks to film because every day that we'd go out to film, it was 130-degree temperature in the shade by 11 o'clock in the morning. At 11 in the morning, it was too hot to film anymore. You had to quit, and then we'd have to go back to these tents where we all lived, right next to the railroad station in Mosul, Iraq, where the Orient Express used to roll in, and we'd go back to our tents and stay there from 11 in the morning until about 8:30 at night. And then there was still enough daylight between 8:30 in the evening and about 11 at night to do some more filming. So we were filming split days. It was a very unusual schedule. Von Sydow had to stay in makeup until 8:30 at night, when we'd come back to film again, and we would just freshen up his makeup a little bit, and we wouldn't finish with him until close to midnight, and then it took approximately an hour to get him out of this makeup. So beyond just portraying Father Merrin in this sequence, it was a physical ordeal for Von Sydow to just be prepared to do this part at all. It was an extremely difficult shoot, both for him and for the two makeup artists, Dick Smith and Rick Baker. Originally, Blatty didn't have this in his script, but I felt that it gave you not only the sense of exotic locale and mystery, but the spiritual sense and the mystical sense that pervades the entire film, in addition to being an attention grabber because of its eerie sounds and its mysterious sights. And it is an actual archaeological dig, and the demon Pazuzu has, of course, been idolized in that area. So I restored this scene from Blatty's novel to the script, even after everyone connected with the production of the film and with Blatty's book felt that it should be cut. And even though the details might not be readily understood by an audience, the mood and atmosphere that it sets is irreplaceable, in my opinion. By the way, the woman in this carriage is 108 years old. The statue of Pazuzu was built by our production designer, Bill Malley. It's a model of the actual statue of Pazuzu, which is at the museum in Iraq. It was built at Warner Brothers in Burbank and shipped to the Exorcist crew in Mosul, Iraq. And it arrived about 3 weeks late, which delayed our filming. We shipped the model of Pazuzu over with Flying Tigers, and for some reason, it was lost. I think it was sent to Hungary or somewhere by mistake. It was clearly marked, clearly labeled, clearly insured, and it got shipped not to Mosul originally, but to Hungary, and then had to be rerouted to us in Mosul. And at the very end of the sequence, of course, he encounters the demon Pazuzu itself in the form of a statue, and you get the sense that he is girding up for a battle with the demon again, somewhere, somehow. So we went to the north of Iraq, where Blatty had set this first scene in his novel, and I tried to, as accurately as possible, recreate the tempo and the tone and the mythology that is at the very heart of what The Exorcist is all about. And so the red-hot sun of Iraq gives way to a cool morning in Georgetown, coming in over the Potomac River, picking up the campus at Georgetown University until it finally focuses down on the little 3-story red brick Federalist house that is at the corner of 36th and Prospect Street in Georgetown, at the foot of which are the Hitchcock steps, where Chris MacNeil is, on this very morning, working on the script that she's studying for the film that she's making in Georgetown. I first heard about The Exorcist when I was on tour across the United States for the French Connection, which I had just finished directing and which was just about to open. And I was in San Francisco, as a matter of fact, when a pouch arrived for me, and it had the galleys of The Exorcist in it, which William Peter Blatty had sent to me. And I must say I put off reading the book for several days. I didn't have enough time to give to it. I felt also that Bill was best known as a humorist at that time. I had no reason to think he could pull off something like the psychological thriller that The Exorcist was supposed to have been. But finally I picked the book up and started reading it, and I was unable to put it down. I just couldn't put it down that night. I started reading it at about 10 o'clock at night when I got back to the hotel after dinner, and I didn't finish up till about 2, 3 in the morning. I read the whole book in a period of about 5 or 6 hours, and I was astonished. I thought it was just an incredibly intense and moving piece of work. I believed it totally, and it was only after the fact that I realized what a well-written novel it was.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mrs. MacNeil.
How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
It's okay, I've got
The subject, of course, was original. I had never read anything at all like it.
Oh, Carl, we've
What
got
this
wraps
book
and
was
Betty, but
totally
it's
unique
fast.
as a story. And then the characters, I felt, were so beautifully and richly portrayed. And in the course of of reading the book, you find out so much about the ritual of exorcism and how it's still being practiced, and what an unusual procedure it is, and how rare it is. But what Blatty did was to make it appear as though it was something that was going on constantly. He did so in a way that it was like reading a work of nonfiction. That rarely comes along.
Now, take a look at this damn thing, will you? It just doesn't make sense.
I knew Bill Blatty years ago when Blake Edwards invited me to read his script of the feature film of Peter Gunn. And it had been co-written by Blake and Bill Blatty. I read the script and I found it severely wanting.